Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Virginia Morris. We warmly welcome the family of Private Norbert Gilroy O'Reilly, whose story will be told shortly. This evening we are honoured to acknowledge Brigadier Rose King, Deputy Chief of Army New Zealand, Major General Natasha Fox, Deputy Chief of Army Australia, and their accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you wish to do so when you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Norbert Gilroy O'Reilly. Norbert O'Reilly was born on the 30th of March 1891 in Katoomba, New South Wales. Affectionately known as Norb, he was one of 10 children born to Luke and Jane O'Reilly. Young Norbert received his education at a local public school in Hartley district of the Blue Mountains. He was popular in his town, attending the local church and participating in events such as the Gymkhana. On completion of his education, he took up work as a farmer and later joined his brothers working as a selector on Roberts Plateau in Queensland, eventually settling near the town of Kerry by Canberra Creek in southeast Queensland. Norbert O'Reilly enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 16th of October 1916. He was assigned to the 25th Battalion and began a period of training in Australia. In November, he was farewelled by Kerry locals at a social dance, at which he was presented with a watch. A month later, he embarked from Sydney on board the troop ship Demosthenes, bound for the Western Front. Private O'Reilly reached England in March 1917. He had taken ill on the journey from Australia and spent much of the voyage in the ship's hospital. In 1917, he developed a fever again and found himself in hospital. 10 days later, he rejoined his unit and continued training in England. In June 1917, he made the journey to France, joining his battalion in early July. His unit was resting behind the lines near the French town of Bapaume after the carnage of Bullecourt some months earlier. During the first 2 months of his active service, Private O'Reilly spent time completing training exercises with his new comrades and helping French farmers with harvesting. In August 1917, he wrote a letter to Margaret Ward, a woman from Kerry who he hoped to marry. The letter contains a poem conveying his longing to be home. When I rode in blissful silence, with a heart too full to speak, there was one who rode beside me by your banks, Canberra Creek. Canberra, your watching, dearest, haunts me daily like a spell, calls me back again in spirit to the place I love so well. This would be Norb O'Reilly's final letter home. On the 12th of September 1917, his battalion was moved to the Belgian front in preparation for a major attack on the Ypres salient. The 25th Battalion would attack at a place called Menin Road, attempting to capture sections of the ridge east of the city of Ypres. The battle began in the early hours of the morning on the 20th of September after a heavy Allied artillery barrage. Advancing troops were faced with heavy entrenched German defensive positions, which included concrete pillboxes on the high ground. Allied troops quickly took their objectives, even in the face of high casualties and heavy enemy resistance. During this attack, Private Norbert O'Reilly sustained a wound to his head. He was taken by field ambulance to the 10th Casualty Clearing Station, and from there was transferred by train to the 18th General Hospital at Canberra. He was cared for by medical staff for 3 days, but his wounds were too severe and he died at 10:15 p.m. on the 23rd of September 1917. News of his death reached newspapers in Australia, who remembered Norm O'Reilly. He was a devoted son and brother, and belonged to a most exemplary family. He was a practical Catholic and had a lovable nature and was therefore most popular. He was buried at the nearby Etalur Military Cemetery, aged 26. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photo is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Norbert Gilroy O'Reilly, who gave his life for us, our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.